Hey folks, welcome back to another tutorial in this dungeon mechanics tutorial series. Before we take a look at how we can have the enemy attack the player and damage the health bar, we need to have the player have a health bar before we take a look at how to do the damage event. So in this tutorial, I'm going to quickly show you how to add a health bar to the actual player. I will be using my previous tutorial on how I made a expandable health system or a player stat system in this tutorial. So before you watch this video, I highly recommend you go and watch that video and implement the player stat before so that you'll be able to easily follow this instruction on how to add the health bar to the player just like how you see on the screen. Let's get started. First, let's go to our Dungeon Mechanics folder. Inside of this is where I created the player stats. Again, the link will be in the description on how to create these simple and expandable player stat system. Feel free to watch that video and set up your player stats because that's what we'll be using here. I'm going to go ahead, right click, and then set up a new folder and name it UI. Inside of this UI folder, I'm going to right click user interface and search for widget blueprint. In here, I'm going to select user widget W underscore health bar. That's the name for it. Open this up, and inside of it, I'm going to add in a size box. And select the size box, and up here, I'm going to put it on desired on screen. Width override and height override is what we're going to be playing with. I'm going to make this width about 100 and also the height about 50. Now I'm going to put in a progress bar inside of this size box, and it's going to fill the entire size box. I don't want it to fill the entire size box. I just want it in the middle. So I'm going to, on the vertical alignment, I'm going to make this center. So that'll make a small little box. Now we need to, in our player stats, we are actually updating our stat map and then adding the health to it. So we need to find a way on how somehow to communicate this information over to our widget so the widget can update the health bar along with it. So we're going to use our interface to do it. Normally I would cast and then get the stat from the player continuously. Due to the memory size concerns that we have, I'm going to go ahead and do a interface communication. So back in our BPI Dungeon Manager interface, I'm going to add a new function and say update player stat. I'm going to make this static, like instead of saying update health stat, I'm just going to name it update player stat because we can use this to update all other stats of the player as well. Inside of here in the inputs, I'm going to put in a stat name, and this would be of type E underscore player stats. This is the enumeration that we create in that player stat tutorial. And I'm going to also create a base value, which would be of type float. This is our base value of that specific stat, and then also a max value, and this would be the max value of that specific stat. And now we can compile and save. We can go ahead and close the Dungeon Manager. We don't need it. In our health bar, we're going to go to our graph, go to our class settings, and here where it says interfaces, I'm going to go ahead and say BPI Dungeon Manager, and that will add the Dungeon Manager interface to our actual widget. I don't need this at this time. I'm going to delete all of them. And then in our interface, I'm going to find the update player stat, right click and implement the event. In this event, we're only going to take our base value and max value and set them as variables. To do that, drag off of it and say promote to variable and say base. And our max, we're going to drag off and say promote to variable and name it max. There you go. That's it for now. Again, the stat is available for you to choose to do whatever you want to do with different stats. For now, we're only going to work with the health stat, so I'm going to leave this empty. But in the future, we will take this and then we'll do a switch function on it or a select function on it. Now we're going to go to our designer. We want to update a couple things. First, I want the background of this health bar to be black. So I'm going to go to this background image. On the tint, I'm going to make this not all the way black, but like a grayish tone to it. Just like that. And then also in my fill color and opacity, I'm going to select this bind instead of having to manually select the color. I'm going to go select this bind and then do a create binding. Now the create binding is pretty straightforward. All I'm going to do is get my base health and then check. If this is less than 25, less than or equal to, let's do that. Less than or equal to 25, then we're going to do a branch. And this branch, we're going to connect this to the return node. Let's connect this here and then connect it to the branch, right? And this, I'm going to select this return value and I'm going to make it red. So if our health is less than 25, we're going to make it red. Let's make it a dark red. If that is not the case, then I'm going to copy all these three and paste it and then put it underneath the false here. If our base value is less than or equal to, let's say about 55, again, this number is arbitrary. You can always choose to change it. And I'm going to make it a little bit of like an orange color. And then same thing, I'm going to copy this whole thing and then paste it. And I'm going to say if our health is, delete this, and I'm going to make it greater than now. Greater than or equal to 56. I'm going to make this into a green value. Sorry, we are healthy. Compile and save. And that's all we're going to do for our fill and the color. Now, back in our actual designer, we need to update this percentage, which goes from 0 to 1. And we're going to go ahead and bind this. We're going to go create binding. And this one would be pretty straightforward. You're going to get your base value, and then you get your max value. Get our base value divided by the max value. And then do a clamp so this never goes below 0. And return. And the max value, you can just plug it into max here. And you'll plug that into the return. That's all we're going to do. Now, in our third person character, select my mesh component and add in a widget component. This would be our health bar. So I'm going to name this as our health bar. And select the health bar and make this of type W_health bar. And I'm going to draw this like 100 by 50, just like how we did in our actual widget as well. And then make this into a screen space so that the bar is always visible to the player at all given times. Now that we have the health bar, let's go to our event begin play. And we want to tell our player stats that this is the health bar object that I want you to send the interface function to. And if the player stats were to ever try to get a reference to this health bar, it needs to cast to the third player. We have another way to do this. In our player stats, we're going to go to our variables and then create a health bar underscore reference. And this would be of type widget component. Make sure it's a widget component object reference. And then now we can compile and save. We're going to go back to our third person and drag off of this BPC stats and then say set health bar reference. And then we're going to drag our health bar widget here and then connect it to the health bar reference. This way, we have now effectively communicated to our BPC player stats and set this health bar to our health bar widget without having to cast. And in our actual health player stats, after we completed updating our size map in our begin play, we're going to get this health bar reference. Off of this, we're going to get user widget object. And off of this user widget object, we're going to say update player stat. And you can see that it's a message type. And we can connect this to our completed. And here, we're going to drag our stat map. And then I'm going to go ahead and say find. I know it's a health that we're working with, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it at health. Take this, break it, drag off of this out, and then we break it. And then this, we're going to set it to stat, base value to base value, and the max value to max value. And this would actually set our health stat in the game. So if I were to press play right now, you'll notice that my health bar, our max health is at 150 and the base health is at 100. So that's why you don't see the entire bar filled up. And what I'm also going to do is in my third person character, I'm going to go down here to an empty spot. I'm going to say keyboard. Let's say a V key. Okay, there you go. Keyboard V. Get our player stats. And I'm going to say update player stats. And this is basically, I want to reduce my health so I can show you how this works. So I'm going to make it -10, and that will be on the health stat. And just because I press update the health stat, the health bar is not going to update because we are updating the health stat using this function. And this function is not really shooting out any message. So we want to add our message function, this right here, into our function as well from our main event graph. So I'm going to copy this health bar reference and user widget and also this update player stat and then drop it in here. After we have found the item in the size map, we want to send in the update player stat call before we add it to the container or update our stat map. What we're updating is basically over here. So the S player stats, we're going to add it in here. And then the base value, we're not going to add this base value. We're going to add the updated base value, which is over here. So the base increment off of this clamp, I'm going to go ahead and add it to our base value. And this max increment off of this max increment, I'm going to just drag it and connect it to our max increment as well. And this would send out the message. Now, if I were to press play, and if I press the key V, you'll notice that the health is going down. And when the health reaches a certain threshold, it changes color to yellow. And then it goes to red when it's at the bottom 25%. And that is how you make a simple health bar and add it to the actual player. Hope you like this video, folks. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one where we're going to have the enemy actually attack and make a damage to the health bar. Thank you, Merle Peterson, for joining the Patreon and supporting this channel to grow.